In this video, we're going to configure the API information section on the Swagger UI page. It's right here. And Swagger UI page is configurable, but we should keep in mind that there are things that can be configured and there are things that cannot be configured. I'm going to show you how to configure some of the things, but for most of it, please refer to SprintFox and Swagger documentation pages and see if the information you want to configure can actually be configurable. So let's configure this section of our page. I'll go back to my Swagger config and I'm going to bring a couple of code snippets. The first one I'll paste right here is API information. Let me import it first. It comes from SprintFox documentation service. And there are a couple of objects that I still need to import. Let me format source code on my page. So the API information object contains some useful details that is displayed in the top left corner on our Swagger UI page here. And if you move mouse over the API information object, you can see the documentation for this object. So it takes in parameters like title, description, API version, terms of service URL, contact information, license, license URL, and so on. Let me put these parameters one under another so that we can easily match them to the list provided in the documentation and see which value is for which method argument. For example, in my case, the title is Photo App RESTful Web Service Documentation, and the description is this page documents Photo App RESTful Web Service endpoints, and that this documentation is version 1.0. Let me bring in contact information. I'll paste it at the top here, and I'll first import contact. It needs to come from SprintFox documentation service. Okay, and if I move mouse over the contact, it takes in name, URL, and email. So this is the name of the person that can be contacted regarding this documentation, the URL, and the email of the contact person. And then this contact object is being added to API information object here. All right. Next up is vendor extension. Let me bring up a little code snippet and I'll paste it right under the contact here. And let me import array list. Let me import list and vendor extension. I'm not going to cover vendor extensions in this video because I'm not going to use them, but extensions or vendor extensions, these are custom properties and they start with x dash and then something, for example, x dash logo. And these custom properties, they can be used to describe some extra functionality that is not covered by the standard OpenAPI specifications. I'm not going to cover vendor extensions and how to use them here, but you can research on how to use them on your own. So in this video, I'm just going to add an empty list. Alright, so we've created API information object and now we need to include it into our docket object. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a new line here. And I'm going to add this API information to our docket object. Docket object is used to configure lots of things in our Swagger UI. So I will add dot and I will look for API information, select this, and then add this API information object into API information. Now I can save this. Let me restart my application and then go to Swagger UI page and see how it looks now. Let me open the console and see if it started. Okay, my application started. Now I can go to a browser page and I will refresh it. And here we go. So I have now a better title. And in the top right corner of my title, I have API version. It's version 1.0. If I go back to my API information and change this one here, if I put it 2 or 3.0, it will be reflected in this corner. And then I have base URL and then the link to API docs page. And then I have the description and additional information that I have configured, the terms of service URL, which is provided here, this line here. Then the contact information, the website and the email address, and then the licensing information, which is provided here. Alright, so it already looks a lot better, and there are lots of other things that you can configure using Docket. For example, your API might be available over HTTPS, so there is a way to specify supported protocols. And to do that, I will again go to my Docket object, and then I put dot, and then I choose protocols, and here I can provide a list of them, and it actually has to be a set. So I will need to create a new hash set, and then here I will provide a list. And in the list I will provide supported protocols, for example HTTP and HTTPS. And now let me import hash set, save this page, and let me restart my application and check this Swagger UI page. Open up my console, application started, and refresh it. And now I get this drop-down box that allows me to select a protocol which will be used when I send HTTP request. And if I expand it, it has HTTPS and HTTP, so I can choose one of them. Okay, so let's go back to our Sprint tool suite. And if I move mouse over the docket and then hold command button and click on open documentation, docket object is using builder pattern. And if I scroll down, I can see all the things that I can configure using this object. Here it is. So I can configure API information, I can configure security context, security schemas, I can configure produces and consumes, I can configure a host and the protocols which we have just configured, and so on. So I'm not going to go into every single one, and in this videos we will configure just enough for us to be able to use our API documentation and to make our API functional. Okay, so let me close this and let's continue.